To be a follower of Jesus, to be a disciple of Jesus, is to live between the world as it is and the world as it should be. The world as it is and the world as it should be. And living between those two places necessitates that we make decisions. Sometimes those decisions are clear-cut, based on values and based on morals. We make a decision in the world as it is, not the world as it should be, and we know we are right, and we know that God is on our side. Other times, and perhaps more often, we have to make decisions that are less clear-cut. Human sin is sufficiently complex that we have to make decisions where we are not so confident that God is on our side. We are not so confident we are right. That has been no more clear to Annie and I than when we've had small children. You make a decision and hope for the best. So I have a story. When Eleanor, my eldest daughter, who's now 7, when she was between the ages of 2 and 3, like most 2 to 3-year-olds, she's very picky about what she would eat. But we learned she would eat chicken. Now, at the same time, she was learning the sounds that animals make. So she learned that, chickens say, bok, bok. And there was a precise moment when we realized she connected those dots. We had picked up lunch at, I think, Chick-fil-A, and she was eating chicken. In the back seat, she said, wait, is this a bok, bok chicken? Am I eating a chicken? And I don't remember whether it was Annie or myself, but one of us made a choice in the moment. And we decided to say, no, it's not a bok bok chicken. It's a different kind of chicken. And as happens, when you give an untruth, you have to stay consistent with that untruth. And if you know my daughter Eleanor, she remembers everything. So for years later, every time we served her chicken, she would say, wait, is this a bok bok chicken? And we'd have to keep the lie alive. We'd have to say, no, this is not a bok bok chicken. And that worked until it did not work. And I remember that day, I was grilling a beer can chicken. And if you know the posture you put a chicken when you grill it as a beer can chicken, it makes it very obvious that it's not a bok bok chicken. And I remember bringing it in to cut it up for dinner, and Eleanor looked at this chicken, and her jaw dropped, and her eyes widened, and she said, that's a bok bok chicken. And my mother-in-law, who was visiting at the time, who loves to share truth, said, Eleanor, it was always a bok bok chicken. And her jaw dropped, and her eyes widened. When I just heard that gospel lesson, my jaw dropped and my eyes widened. This is a really challenging text this morning, and it is without a clear interpretation. So in this parable this morning, we have this rich person, owns a lot of property, has people who owes him a lot, has a manager who is not a good manager, calls him into accountability. And this manager is dishonest in his response in order to gain favor with the individuals who owe the rich person. He goes to each individuals and collects the debt, but significantly less than any individual owes the proprietor. And at the end of this lesson, Jesus seems to reward this behavior. It's a surprise. I expect him to call him into condemnation, but he doesn't. He rewards this behavior and seems to talk about this new generation that is more shrewd in how they deal with wealth and how they deal with people. I'm left in this gospel lesson wondering, with my jaw down and my eyes wide. I know several priests I spoke to this week who said they would not be touching this text. And if you read commentaries, there's no less than 100 different interpretations of this text. Here's what I see this morning. Living between the world as it is and the world as it should be. This morning, we have an individual with a lot of wealth, other individuals without a lot of wealth who owe debts. And we have a manager who is not doing his job well, called into accountability, about to lose his livelihood, covered with shame. And at the beginning of the parable, therefore, we are at the world not as it should be. And through this confluence of events, actions that are questionable, the end result is the world more like how God might want it to look, because we have individuals who owe money, who presumably cannot pay those resources back, who are therefore let go of those debts. They are in a better place than where they began. This manager who was not doing his job very well, at the end of this parable, he is redeemed. Relationships in his life are redeemed. He is in a better place. And by all information we have, it seems like the rich property owner still has enough. However questionable the values within it are. What I wonder is why or how Jesus gave this parable. Well, what I know is that my life is complicated. I wonder if your life is complicated, and through the mystery and complexity and messiness of human experience, the end of this parable has the world maybe a little bit more like God would dream it to be. So going back to chicken, okay, Annie and I have learned the hard way that information we have is a resource. Information we have that our children do not have is a resource. And we have the choice of how we handle that resource. And we've learned the hard way that if we lie, it's not effective. So what we've learned is, whether it's chicken or whatever, to tell the truth to our children. Maybe not the full truth. Maybe we omit unnecessary details. But we tell the truth because maybe Eleanor will eat meat, maybe she won't, but that's her choice. We choose to give the correct information to her. So, fade out, fade in. Just a few weeks ago, this is a true story, we were driving in the car, and Harriet, my 4-year-old, had a Chicken McNugget Happy Meal. So she was about to eat her Chicken McNugget Happy Meal, and she stopped and she said, and all 3 girls were in the back, and it's important to know about Harriet, she loves the Lion King. So if you catch her, she'll be singing Hakuna Matata all the time. So they're in the back seat, and Harriet stops and she says, "Wait, is this real chicken?" And Eleanor doesn't stop. She says, "It's real chicken. It's always been real chicken. Don't let them lie to you." And Harriet says, "Hakuna Matata," and takes a bite of the chicken. The resource of truth to give agency, right? This church has tremendous resource, tremendous potential. In a world outside that is not yet what God dreams it to be. May we use that resource to make the world more like God would dream it to be. And sometimes that will be messy, sometimes that will be questionable, and it will take a lot of work, but may we find values within ourselves to make those decisions. Last night is a prime example. There was this wonderful fundraiser for our Saviour Center. And Jane's in the back. I bet you she wants me to say you can still give to Our Saviour Center even if you weren't there last night. May we be a people who use our resource faithfully to make the world more like God would dream it to be.